I don't think that we should take former President Trump seriously when he talks about paying for getting rid of the income tax with higher tariffs. But I do think that we should really think about why he is throwing that out to test the waters. And what his real commitments are is cutting taxes for the wealthy and for big corporations. And that's what we just heard. It's what we hear over and over on the campaign trail. And that's the part that I do think we really need to take seriously. And frankly, we have been experimenting with huge cuts to taxes for the wealthy and corporations over the last 40, 50 years at this point. They have not delivered for the American people. And that's why they're so deeply, deeply unpopular. And so any claims that this is going to be positive and grow the economy really are just more of the same failed trickle-down economics.
If these tax cuts were made permanent, though, and there's no effort to offset them, to pay for them on Capitol Hill, what do you say to those Trump supporters who say it's about growth, that we will grow our way out of the deficit?
Yeah, so, the corporate side of the Trump tax cuts actually are permanent, and they were the largest part of the TCJA's revenue losers, and they have completely failed to deliver. The Trump administration. So on the individual side, I think, again, the model of growth that is built on funneling more and more cash to the very wealthiest in this country has not delivered for working people. It hasn't delivered for families. And I'd also like to talk about, we hear a lot of concern about the deficit. What I'm concerned about is using these huge deficits that have been entirely created by first the Bush tax cuts and then their extension and then the Trump tax cuts on top of them as justification for cutting the programs that families and seniors rely on in their day-to-day economic lives. I think that is really, really dangerous for economic growth as well as for the pocketbooks of ordinary Americans.
Well, when considering dangers to economic growth, we know the consumer is the engine for that. Yep. And if you look at the retail sales data we got this morning, it would seem that there are signs that the consumer at the very least is slowing down, if not starting to crack in a more material way. It's not just the only 0.1% month-on-month figure that we got, but the downward revision from the month prior, Kitty. How concerned are you by the data we've just seen come in?
So I'm concerned primarily because over the last year, 18 months, as the Fed has pursued its rate hiking campaign, the American consumer has actually been surprisingly resilient, and that has driven a strong labor market, had good spillover effects into wages. Those are all positive things, but it's sort of been a question of when that would start to pull back. And, this data on top of what we're seeing with growing credit card balances and delinquencies, we're starting to see some stress on American families who have run through the little bit of savings that they were able to accumulate during the pandemic and are facing higher prices, especially on things like housing and childcare, where the Fed's not really able to bring those prices down. And in fact, those high interest rates are really taxing American families very directly.
Kitty, we just have a minute left. When you hear Walmart talk about affluent people trading down to shop at their stores as opposed to going out to whatever luxury retailer they might be used to, what does that tell you about where we're going to be 6 months from now?
I think that the good side of that is that we should have retailers competing on price.
Okay.
What we've seen instead over the past 18 months is prices going up and retailers really absorbing that and creating higher profit margins for themselves. Yeah. So I like to see that competition going. But what we really want to see is that competition leading to lower prices for all consumers, leading to higher wages for workers, and for families to be able to get ahead on the things that really matter, like education and healthcare, childcare, housing. And so that's what I want us to focus on. And I think that's really what the Fed needs to be focused on as well.
Yeah.